My talk today is called The Urge to Purge. It being the time of Mardi Gras just happened. Ash Wednesday just happened, and we are in the first week of Lent, which is a Christian holiday that's been going on for a long, long time, as you all know. And it's a time when people look within much more than they do during the rest of the year. That's the idea, is to look within. It's not necessarily always about just giving up something, although that helps us to look within more, to become a little more conscious of this season that is coming before us, this Easter season. Now, it's also a time right now when many of us start thinking about spring cleaning. We start looking around our house and looking for things that no longer serve us or that have been stuck away in a closet, or it's the time then when we give the house a good airing out on one of these beautiful, unexpected, nice, warm, nice early spring days. And then after that happens and we've kind of shook everything out of our clothing, all the dust and static electricity and all that sort of thing that's hanging in there, then we begin a time of going through our closets and deciding that which things we need to put away and those things we need to bring back out. We start getting this, and this is a rough time, isn't it, this time of year when you want to put away your woolens and so forth, and so you start to do that, and you bring out some short sleeves and some shorts, and you start getting ready for that season, and then suddenly it's cold again, and you have to go back to the other. I know when I was a young boy, this was the time of year when I would lose my coat many times, because I'd go need a coat when I went to school in the morning, and then when I was coming home, it would be nice and warm, and so my friends and I would play, and as we were playing and running around chasing one another or whatever we were doing, then suddenly we'd take off our coats and we'd leave them somewhere, and then we'd think, gee, I gotta go home, and we'd hurry home, and then my mother would always say, where's your coat? Coat? Was I wearing a coat? You know, and I had to walk back and find it, and that sort of thing. So this is the time of year that we want to cast off things. We want to purge things in our lives. We no longer want to carry those things around with us. Things that we have had a great idea about, and so we bought some item, and then suddenly we see it by the curb, getting ready to be recycled maybe. I know that happens with a lot of athletic equipment this time of year. You'll see things that people ride on and so forth. They're sitting out there, or they're on Craigslist or whatever, because they realize, I don't think I'm going to do that anymore or ever. And so they take a change about that. What I want to talk about, though, is something that Jesus mentioned in one of his stories that seems to confuse a lot of people. It's kind of a mysterious view of psychology, or the makeup of consciousness. And it's obviously about consciousness and nothing else. It's not about religion. It's not about behavior nearly as much as it is about consciousness. And he tells this story as though we are cleaning house. And he says a person goes in and they clean their house and make it spotless and everything, and they drive out all the demons that once were in their home, and then they sit back and relax, and that demon goes out into the desert and finds 7 more just like him or worse, and comes back. And now the situation of that person is worse than before it began. Now, if he's talking about cleansing your house as though you're going around taking care of it, making it more holy and so forth, that's one thing, driving out demons. But when he's talking about that, he's mostly talking about ways that we think, habits that we have that don't serve us at all, or that are very negative, and because of this negativity we're stuck, and it's creating a sense of clutter in our home, in our mind. A clutter going on. Now he states, though, that if all we do is just purge and clear it out and say, I'm not going to think like that anymore, I'm not going to behave that way anymore, I'm not going to allow that to run my life anymore. Then what happens is, now we're nice and clean. We see ourselves as clean. Hey, I cleaned that out. I'm not thinking about that anymore. And then we sit and do nothing to replace it. Now we all know, or we've heard at one time or another, if you haven't, I hope this is something that you really listen to, and that is that nature abhors a vacuum. Which simply means that if you empty something, something else is going to come in there to fill it back up again. And that's what Jesus is talking about in this story, in this parable that he's trying to teach. He's talking about the idea, if we say, okay, I'm done, I'm clean, I've got it, and do nothing else, that slowly but surely, not only the old ideas and the old behaviors and beliefs will creep back in to our minds and our consciousness, but other things as well. For instance, people that say, okay, I've done it, I'm clean, I've done it, I've kicked the habit, whatever that habit might be. And then it's suddenly, before they realize it, it's replaced now with judgment of others who have that habit that they've just kicked. I can give you a great example from my own life when I quit smoking cigarettes these many years ago. And I still catch myself doing this a little bit now. I caught myself the other day doing it and immediately had to stop what I was doing, and it's this. When I quit smoking cigarettes, that meant that I quit having ashtrays around my house that had to be dumped. I quit flipping the cigarette, what was left of the cigarette, out before I went into a building and so forth. Then, right after I had quit, I would see people pull up in the left-hand lane, getting ready to wait for the light to change, open the door and taking the ashtray in their car and dumping it on the side of the highway. Oh, that became something that I could hardly stand, because I wasn't doing it anymore. Didn't bother me at all when I was doing it, but I had cleansed that part of myself and replaced it with self-righteousness. I was self-righteous, judgmental, and looking outward at others and saying, oh, you're bad. You are not as good as I am. You see, the demon that had replaced the one that was there before, it was worse than the one that was there to begin with. Before, I was just sort of unconscious. I was unconsciously doing what I was doing. But now I was conscious and using that against others as though it was some sort of a weapon or something that made me holier than that person, better than somebody else. I was at the DMV getting my license renewed, and I saw a lot of people standing out there, and they were making telephone calls, and it was usually, do you know where my birth certificate is? Or they were saying, they're wanting this item, and I don't have this document. They were talking to somebody, and they were smoking, so that meant you had to walk through the cloud of smoke to get in there. I felt a little twinge when I walked through there. Then I saw somebody walk in the door and flip his cigarette, and I didn't just go, I went, and caught myself. You're doing it again. You're looking out at somebody else, and rather than blessing them for where they are now and trying to draw them into the place where you are creating an us and a them. I'm not like you. But I am like that person. The idea of us wanting to purge something out of our system is good, but not by replacing it with something else like I'm speaking of. I caught myself. I realized what I was doing. The first time it happened, I didn't realize that I was being self-righteous or judgmental. I thought I was being right. We see this a lot in our political system today, and that's why the country is so divided. And it's not just the country, it seems to be the world is beginning to divide into an us and them. Rather than realize, as many people have tried to point out, we're all immigrants, or we're all the children of immigrants, or the grandchildren of immigrants, rather than seeing it that way and remembering, like I needed to, oh yeah, I used to smoke, I did those very same things. Why am I blaming them? They're just who they are. They're where they are right now. Rather than seeing each immigrant that comes into this country right now, or is trying to escape poverty or escape some terrible war that's going on, we forget what it would even be like, because most of us have not experienced that. Do you realize that in one country alone, this last 2 days, within 48 hours, 110 people starved to death? We can't imagine that in the world that we live in the world where want is just something that happens to somebody else. When we purge ourselves of some of these beliefs that we have had, these beliefs of righteousness, these beliefs within ourselves that we have of entitlement, these beliefs, when we allow them to fall away from us, let us not replace them instead with something that's even worse. A sense of the other, us and them. So when you have this urge to purge something from your life, that's good. Do it. Follow it all the way out to its furthest dream in the scheme of your own life. That's fine. Just remember that Jesus spoke to us that that's the moment when something even worse can befall you. And beware. Be alert. Be thinking in your own life. Now, how has this changed me? Has this changed me to be a better person for myself and for my world? Or has it changed me into a person who now sets myself up and sees myself as grander, greater than, better than? Once we get to the place where that doesn't occur for us, then we're beginning to see the kingdom that Jesus spoke of. This kingdom is a state of consciousness. It is a place where love is real. It's not just something we talk about. It's not something that we do and see as some sort of abstract. It's actually happening in our lives. You know, the person that we now call Saint Mother Teresa could have easily given up at any moment and said, this isn't for me. What am I doing this for? And don't for a moment think, because she's admitted it, that this didn't occur to her many times in her lives. But she kept going back to love. And she kept saying, I can't experience love unless I am love. And I can't be love if I always see the other as separate from me. This sense of separation is what causes most of the problems in our world. This sense of separation creates for us an illusion that there is something outside of ourselves that we can purge by simply forgetting about it. We can't forget about the people who are starving because their skins are a different color than ours, or because they are far, far, far away and we personally can't do anything about it. We can pray. We can do what Mother Teresa did, one person at a time. We can change ourselves in order for us to create a consciousness, to create a consciousness with that extends out and changes our world. Right now, we see our national identity as being sullied, as being changed, because not enough of us are speaking out and saying, wait a minute, hold it. That's not who we are as a country. That's not who we are as a people. We accept because we have enough for all of us. No one's going to take anything away from us. No one's going to take something that we wish we had. It's very similar to the time that one of the church organizations decided it was going to boycott Disney Disney World and Disneyland because they were accepting on insurance policies the significant other of a person of the same sex. As though they wanted the job that that other person had. Why, this homosexual person is stopping me from having that job of playing a clown at Disneyland. They didn't want to dress up as Mickey Mouse. They didn't want to dress up as Snow White. They didn't want to do any of that. They just wanted to see an other in their lives that they could then be more righteous than. But something wonderful happened about that organization. They came to their senses through prayer, and they fought back that which they had passed before and repealed it and said, really, we're not following what Jesus taught us. Peter looks back at John when Jesus has come back onto this earth and says to him, follow me, follow me. Peter starts following him, and then he looks back at John and he says, what about him? Jesus says this most important thing to us. What is that to thee? Follow thou me. Change your consciousness and stop looking at the outer and saying, well, what about so-and-so? Yeah, well, what about him? Look to yourself. What is that to any of us? When we see something in our lives that we don't care for, what is that to us if it changes us to make us like that? Rather, what is that to thee? Follow the Christ. Follow the Christ. That's how we change our world. That's how we eliminate for all of us and for our children and generations to come the idea that there is an other. Yes, for some it means that nationality, the borders around a certain country are blurred a little bit because we start seeing the entire globe the same way the astronauts saw it from the moon or from outer space as a whole. They didn't see little imaginary lines drawn around Florida and Texas. They didn't see any of that. They just saw the world. It's as though Jesus was speaking to them and saying, what is that to thee? Follow me. Look at it as one people, one life, one world, one love. When one suffers, we all suffer. Listen to the teachings of Jesus during this Lent season. Listen to them closely. Purge from your mind anything that is not like Jesus. Purge from your mind anything that is not like Buddha. Purge from your mind anything that is not like Lao Tzu. Purge these things from your mind. The urge to be better is within every one of us. It is the Christ knocking at the door, not from the outside trying to get in, but from the inside.